Welcome to Backwoods University, a place where we focus on wildlife, wild places, and the people who dedicate their lives to conserving both. Big shout out to Onyx Hunt for their support of this podcast. I'm your host, Lake Pickle. On this episode, we're headed back down to the brackish waters of America's Amazon. That's the Gulf, for any of you who may have missed that episode. Only this time, we're setting sail from the Louisiana coast to take a good look into the Menhaden fishing industry, or Pogie boats as they're commonly known, along with the questions surrounding the amount of bycatch they bring in and the frequent conflicts they have with recreational fishermen. Let's dive into it. Now, I'm an inlander, born and raised. Where I grew up and where I currently live, I'm anywhere from 3 to 4 hours to the Mississippi or Louisiana coast. But still, during the summer or early fall months, one of my favorite things to do is head down there to catch speckled trout and redfish. Myself and often 3 to 4 friends will load up and make a long weekend out of it, which is what you're hearing in the background here. This clip is from a trip around Theriot, Louisiana, with my good friends Jordan Blissett, Jimmy Primos, my father, Bobby Pickle, and Travis Lovell with Reelin' Good Charters. Speckled trout, fun to catch, excellent to eat. But me personally, man, I love hooking into those big bull redfish. These things will pull and fight you to the point where you'll be thinking that you have somehow managed to set your hook into a diesel truck. It's a fight and thrill that's impossible to forget. But that is just one of the many crown jewels that make the Louisiana Gulf Coast what it is. It's the people, it's the scenery, it's the smell of the air down there and the boiled shrimp if you're lucky. There's a reason, or really a whole lot of reasons, that this place has been a sought-out destination for thousands upon thousands of anglers. And the short clip that I've shared with y'all here is one of many incredible memories that I've gotten to make down there. Man, it's such a special place and an incredible resource. But now, I'm going to share with you a clip from another fishing trip. I wasn't on this one. A man named Chris Macaluso was. And Chris had a much different experience on his fishing trip than I did. Here's Chris.
Well, we got the Pogie boats out here right up against the beach. They just strung the purse seine net, which catches everything that swims. And now they're pumping the whatever they caught, pogies, menhaden, mullet, croakers, speckled trout, white trout, redfish, whatever got caught in that net. They're pumping what'll go into the hold, and then the big fish are gonna get kicked off to the side, pretty much dead. Sharks, bull redfish, or jacks. And right now they're pumping the water out of the hold to make room for more menhaden. And all that water that's coming out of the boat right now is just no oxygen in it at all. They're pumping it here. This water's hot. It's shallow. They're pumping it in here, and when that no oxygen water comes out in here, it's gonna kill everything there too. So just absolutely no reason for those boats to be this close to this beach. Well, they're in about 4 feet of water at the most, and they're less than 100 yards from us right now, about the length of a football field, and we're 25 yards off this beach. So they're less than 200 yards from this beach. A beach that, by the way, just got restored, just got $120-ish million invested in it to restore it. And you can clearly see this big boat, when he's under power, is chewing up these sandbars and chewing up the surf. Very clearly see that.
We're going to hear from Chris later, but before we go any further, the stage has to be set. 2 different fishing trips off the Louisiana coast, but they were conveying very different experiences. The biggest difference was the presence of the Pogie boat operating in close proximity to where Chris was trying to fish. And we're going to dive off into that subject. But before, we all need to understand just exactly what these Pogie boats, or the Menhaden fishing industry as it's more formally known, actually is. Let's dive in. The Gulf Menhaden purse seine fishery has existed since the late 1800s and is the largest commercial fishing in the Gulf and the second largest in the United States in terms of total landings. Landings peaked around 1 million metric tons in the 1980s and has averaged around 500,000 metric tons over the last decade. Over 90% of that occurs off the coast of Louisiana. A menhaden, or a pogie, as they're more locally called, is a small, oily-fleshed fish. They're bright silver in color and have a distinct black spot right behind their gill opening. They are a flat fish with a deeply forked tail, and at full maturity, they can weigh around a pound and be about 15 inches in length. So, a relatively small fish is what we're talking about here. They can be found in coastal and estuary waters, and they're filter feeders, feeding primarily on plankton. They're also a very important forage fish to several other predator fish species, such as redfish, cobia, dolphins, and many others. As far as the role they play for the Menhaden fishing industry, well, they're the lifeblood of it, and they're harvested for the production of fertilizers, animal feed, fish bait, fish food, and since they're a huge source of omega-3 fatty acid, Menhaden are also used in several human and animal supplements, like fish oil pills, for example. And for the record, I want to put this out early on at the front of this episode. I fully believe in telling both sides of every story, regardless of how controversial or my own personal beliefs or biases.
You have reached Daybrook Fisheries. For the operator, please press 0. Thank you for calling Daybrook Empire.
Your call is now being forwarded. Please hold. Good afternoon, Daybrook Security.
I need to speak to the operator, please.
No one's here today as the plant's off today.
Okay, thank you very much. So, just for the record, I have tried to get a representative from the Menhaden fishing industry to talk to me. I've called, I've sent emails, I even sent Facebook messages, and I was not told no, but I was never responded to. So, if anyone from the Menhaden industry is out there and wants to speak their truth on this issue, I am all ears. Get back to me. Anyway, let's get into it. To kick this off, I'm driving straight to the source. I made a day trip out of it, and now I'm driving into Grand Isle, Louisiana, a tourist destination for anglers far and wide wanting to come down here and experience some of the world-renowned inshore fishing that this place offers. The marshy waters hug up to both sides of the road, and looking out into the distance, I can see several charter fishing boats, not to mention driving past several folks that are trying their luck fishing off the bank. As I get into town, the roads are lined with stilt-elevated buildings whose height protects them from high water incidents. This is a recreational fishing town, through and through. And I'm here to meet a man who has spent his whole life not only appreciating this place, but has made his living as a charter fishing guide.
My name is Keith Bergeron. I've been chartering out of Grand Isle since 2004, 21 years, going on 22, won't be long. I've been fishing all my life. There's no white sand like Florida and Gulf Shores. It's brown sand. It's all natural beaches. The wildlife is just abundant, and the fishing is extraordinary. Even anybody who's an outdoors person would come here and just fall in love with this place.
So it was a passion for you, something that you loved to do long before it turned into a...
Well, even as like a kid, I was always amazed at how somebody could fish for a living. Mm-hmm. And I always dreamed about it, I guess you could say, but never thought I could do it. Mm. And I started out hoping I could do maybe 30 trips a year. Ended up doing like 60. So the first year was just crazy. Ever since then, it's been booming.
Just been booming ever since.
I got more business than I want. I give a lot of trips away to other guides because I just want the business to come here.
Right.
Even if I'm not fishing them.
You just want to keep the area perpetuated.
Yeah.
That's
Because if they can come here and enjoy themselves, they'll come back. And hopefully they'll call me again, and if I'm available, I'll take them.
Keith has a story and perspective that's rooted in love and appreciation for this place that he calls home, as well as countless hours spent on the water. I really think you're going to enjoy hearing it. But before we do, there's someone else y'all need to meet that shares some strong similarities with Keith.
Shane Mayfield, and I basically operate from Port Selford to Venice, Louisiana. I have been doing it full-time now since 96, so I guess I'm coming up on 30 years, but I did it before that too, all through college and even a little bit when I was in high school.
Guiding?
Guiding, yeah.
How'd you get into that?
Long story short, my dad, he still does run a lodge for a corporation down in Port Sulphur. So that's kind of how I got into it in high school. You know, I'd work there in the summers and my off time, and then I'd take some of their customers' help when they had groups coming in to go fishing. And then I did that, you know, and then when I went to college, I'd come home on the weekends and fish and, you know, put a little money in my pocket.
Sure.
And then I got out of college and I went to work for a consulting firm. I have an environmental degree and I just like to fish better. So I only worked about a year and a half, and then I quit my job. And I always tell my customers, when I told my mother I was going to quit, she said, "You going to do what?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to guide full time." And I say, I wish you'd have taken that black iron skillet and beat me upside the head with it, because I don't know what I was thinking. But all joking aside, it's been good to me.
Yeah. Yeah. So you still like it? You like going?
I love taking people fishing. And I mean, I done caught my share. Mm-hmm. If I never catch another redfish again in my life, I done caught way more than most people ever will. So, you know, I just like taking people fishing. It's what I do, and I've been doing it a long time. Mm-hmm. You know?
Both Keith and Shane are Louisiana natives, if their accents don't immediately give that away, as well as veteran charter fishing guides, which is a valuable perspective, seeing as one of the big topics in question is the significant amount of conflicts that seems to be happening between the Pogie boats and charter and recreational fishermen. I want to hear some of their personal experiences with these Pogie boats, as well as their thoughts on them.
They've always been in this area, and it's only certain times of the year where the Pogie really get abundant on the beach. Mm. They start schooling, and they might be laying eggs. I don't know their process of Pogie itself, but I know late summer when it's hot, we see a lot more Pogie boat action. They're not scared to get in there and get on the beach and disrupt the fishermen.
The boats?
Yeah,
okay.
The Pogie boats itself. They're all about catching them Pogies. You know, it don't matter what it takes, who they're going to mess up your fishing spot. They going after them Pogies. Mm-hmm. So it got to where they were catching so many Pogies in a drag that they had a net busted on the beach right here in front of Grand Isle. Like, I don't think they were very far out. And the net, when it ripped, all those dead Pogies were just floating, and they all washed up on the beach in Grand Isle. And this is a tourist place.
Yeah.
So the town had to deal with the stench. And I'm talking about 3-4 feet wide, 6 to 8 inches deep, just dead fish. Mm. So we had a bad issue here, and Grand Isle ended up creating a buffer zone, which was passed by law, where they had to stay away from Grand Isle for at least 3 miles away.
Gotcha. So before that, there was no buffer zone. They could come in wherever they wanted to.
Yeah, that was pretty much free range.
How long ago did they pass that buffer zone, you know?
It's been about 2 years now.
So not that long.
No.
Wow. I would have thought it'd been, I was expecting you to say 10, 15 years ago, something like that.
No. Before this, 2 or 3 years ago, they were able to come in as close as they wanted. I mean, the boats are kicking up sand. That's how shallow they get. Mm-hmm. These nets are, I'm going to just guess and say they probably fish 15 feet of water easy. Mm-hmm. That's how long they stretch down from the bottom to the surface. So if you're in 6, 8 feet of water or less, they're catching everything in sight. Everything in that circle is being trapped in that net.
It's not just Pogies ending up in that net.
No. They got speckled trout, they got croakers, flounders, redfish, you know, even the bull reds, Jack Ravel, dolphin, and they're catching tarpon.
The first talks about making some areas restricted to Menhaden fishing started up in 2023. However, there was no formal law put in place until the early part of 2024. These laws established a coast-wide buffer zone of 1/2 mile and a 1 mile buffer zone at Grand Terry, Elmer's Island, and Holly Beach, as well as a 3 mile buffer zone at Grand Isle. These buffer zones were put in place due to several factors, most notably after 18 separate fish spills, accounting for over 2.5 million wasted Menhaden and at least several hundred dead, breeding-sized redfish. This all occurred in 2023 alone. Some of these fouled up popular beaches and seemingly increased the number of conflicts between recreational anglers and boaters with the Menhaden boats. There was also a significant amount of public outcry from local citizens and sportsmen about the potential damage that this method of fishing could be causing to the shallow waters, the fishery, and the habitat. I want to get Shane's take on this as well.
I'll say this. So for the first time in 30 years, or 30-something, whatever it was, the LDWF, they had done a stock assessment, the first they had done in a long, long, long time. And then they got the results and they said, we got a redfish problem. In other words, we don't have the numbers we'd like to see. We got to do something about it. Well, they had meetings, and it's always a slow process when you're going through that. And finally, they came up and they recommended, okay, we're going to drop it from 5 reds to 4 reds. We're going to go from 16 to 18 inch minimum, nothing over 27 inches. So that's what they did because there was a problem, right? I mean, they've taken that 27-inch fish, like used to be, we could keep one. You know, recreational anglers, and we never really did keep them.
Yeah.
They're not good to eat. You know, if people wanted a trophy, I mean, back in the day, somebody might want to keep one to mount it, but now you can get a replica. You know, you measure in girth and take a picture, and you can get a replica that'll last forever. Well, they cut that out. They said, okay, you can't keep anything over 27 inches no more for recreational charter anglers, what have you. Well, yet the pogie industry, they catch, I don't know, I can't say a definite number. I mean, I don't know. I'm not on those boats. I don't see. But it's incomprehensible to say that when I'm drifting through schools of Menhaden, and on a good day with 3 anglers on the boat, we'll catch, say, 40 to 50 of those things or more. You know, and I'm drifting in a bay boat with popping corks. But when a boat pulls up with a big purse seine and nets a huge school of Menhaden that I know bull reds are in, there's no possible way they can't be catching them and killing them. I mean, it's just the nature of that, the way they fish. And if the recreational angler can't keep any mature redfish because it's supposed to be bad because of the changes in the fishery, well, if they're killing as many as I know they're killing, it can't be good.
Fascinating stuff from Keith and Shane. And believe me, we're not through hearing from these guys. I feel like we're just getting into the meat of their stories, but I feel like now is also a crucial time to kick it back over to Chris Macaluso. You remember him from his fishing clip early in the episode with the pogie boat operating close to him. Chris is the director of the Center for Marine Fisheries and Mississippi River Program Director for the Theodore Roosevelt Conservation Partnership. He works on conservation as well as advancing habitat restoration efforts across the Gulf and improving federal fisheries management law and policy. Chris is going to give us a more detailed view around the Menhaden fishing industry and why it's such a cause for concern. And he's going to accomplish this by telling us about a first-of-its-kind comprehensive study on the Menhaden industry that was just published earlier this year. Quick heads up, you're going to hear the term bycatch. Bycatch is unwanted fish or other marine creatures that get caught during commercial fishing for a different species. So, for example, a bull redfish caught in a pogie boat net is bycatch. Here's Chris.
There have been studies in the past. They were not nearly as thorough as the study that was released earlier this year and was conducted in the 2024 fishing season. And I think that was part of the problem, is that when fishermen I know and charter boat captains, were starting to call me, 8-10 years ago and complaining about what they were seeing from the pogie boats, and it really ramped up in the last 5 to 6 years. We just had a number of big spills. The boats were just getting closer and closer to some of these very popular fishing areas, and people were starting to shoot a lot of video of it. When we would talk about it with fisheries regulators, or we would go to the Wildlife Fisheries Commission or talk about it with lawmakers, the data had big gaps in it, and so you could draw a lot of different conclusions about just how many fish from a bycatch perspective were being killed. And the number I would use was, okay, well, they're allowed up to 5% of their total volume to be bycatch. And if they're harvesting 1 billion pounds of Menhaden a year, well, 5% of that's 50 million pounds of additional dead fish. But we didn't know those things for certain. Like, we were just putting out the numbers that were in the previous bycatch study, which had pretty big gaps in it. Like, nobody had ever really estimated how many bull redfish, for instance, were being killed, how many croaker were being killed, because it was just too difficult for researchers or, biologists or fisheries managers to get down into those nets. They just didn't have the technology that it took to count all of the things that were coming onto that boat and going into the boat and the things that were being kicked back off. Nobody had taken a nearly as close a look as was taken last year during that study.
Before Chris dives into the details of this study, allow me to read to you some of the numbers that came back as a result. The 2024 bycatch study of the industrial Gulf Menhaden fishery indicates the following. Approximately 22,000 breeding-sized redfish, 81 million croaker, 25 million sand trout, or white trout as they're commonly known, and 40 or more other species including black drum, sea trout, cow-nose rays were all observed and counted in those Pogie nets.
But yeah, it's just extraordinary when you look at some of the other numbers there. I mean, the redfish part is what jumps off the page because it's a game fish. Louisiana recently took action to make it illegal for recreational fishermen to harvest a bull redfish. Like, you can't kill a 27-inch plus redfish anymore, but 22,000 of them were killed, according to the estimate from that study, by the menhaden industry last year. When I've talked to reporters about this, or I've talked to lawmakers or others about it, and they say things like, well, but it's just 22,000. I mean, come on, you guys thought it was a lot more than that, or the industry is downplaying that number. And you have to remind them that it is illegal for anyone else to kill those fish. It's illegal. What they're doing is illegal for everybody else. And that's a point that I think can't be lost here. And the reason it's illegal is because those fish are important, because the redfish stock in Louisiana is not nearly as healthy as it once was. And those are the fish that are out there that have escaped our marshes, escaped the wetlands, get out into the Gulf to lay eggs and make more redfish. And so that's why those fish were protected. That's why recreational fishermen in this state, for the most part, said we don't want to kill those fish anymore, because we know that the recovery time to bring that species, that bring that population back up to a healthy level, gets cut down significantly if we stop killing the ones that are making the babies. And so what those guys are doing, killing 22,000 bull redfish, that's illegal for everybody else. And so that's point number one. The other thing is, though, you got to look at some of the other species that are being killed. 81 million croakers. I mean, the estimate is that literally every time those guys set a net, they're killing 6,000 plus croakers. Not only is that an important forage base, an important part of the ecosystem, but croakers are also a fish that recreational and commercial fishermen like to catch because they're very good to eat, and that could be a viable commercial target off of Louisiana's coast for commercial fishermen that don't have snapper quota or other things. They could be catching those croakers. And there has been just a stark lack of bull croakers that folks talk about all the time, how in the 60s and 70s, when they would go offshore, they would fish Lake Pontchartrain, etc., they'd catch these 2-pound croakers. They don't really catch them anymore. Like, it's a huge deal. It's almost as big a deal to catch a 2.5-pound croaker as it is a 25-pound red snapper. The 2.5-pound croakers just aren't there anymore. And maybe one of the reasons they're not there is because the Pogie boats are killing 81 million of those croakers every single year. So it was just those kind of numbers that really jump off the page too. 25 million white trout, 5.5 million white shrimp, millions and millions of mullet, herring, and other things that are out there. That's all an important part of the ecosystem, and these things are supposedly being killed by accident, And another number that not a lot of folks have talked about or made a big deal of is the 240,000 speckled trout. Well, speckled trout is one of those fish that generally doesn't get captured in nets unless it's a gill net. I mean, they're pretty good at getting out of trawls. They're, pretty good at escaping capture, in these purseines. But again, 240,000 speckled trout, I would be willing to bet you that if you took 10 charter boat captains from Grand Isle, those 10 charter boat captains combined in their careers may not take customers to kill 240,000 combined speckled trout. If a charter boat captain was taking 4 customers to catch a limit of speckled trout, and again, the limit of trout now per person in Louisiana is 15 per day.
It's still a lot of fish. You'd have to do that 4,000 times to equal 240,000 speckled trout. There's just not a lot of charter boat captains who are going to do that. I mean, that's the kind of numbers we're talking about, because that's the volume at which this fishery operates.
Those are some pretty jarring numbers, at least to me personally. There's one question that stands out to me right now, though. We know the Menhaden industry has been around for over a century, the late 1800s to be more specific. So why has the conflict around this operation seemed to have such a significant spike in these recent years?
I think what has stood out to people in the last decade or so, in terms of the change that people have seen in terms of their interactions with the boats, is that they went from being domestically owned companies to foreign controlled companies that didn't really take the same perspective when it came to how they approached the fishery that they had when they were domestically owned fisheries. And that's not me making this up. I mean, that's reflected in some of the data that we see, that in the last 10 years, a lot more of the harvest has come closer to shore than it used to. And then, hearing from fisheries regulators in Louisiana who've told me off the record on the side, there was a time where if we were getting a lot of conflicts and people were complaining about dead fish or bycatch, if they complained to, say, the Department of Wildlife Fisheries, the department would call the Pogie companies and say, hey, y'all might need to back off a little bit. But those things stopped happening. If you're a lawmaker who's from North Louisiana, or you're, a member of Congress or whatever, you look at commercial fisheries and you say, well, these guys are operating very close to the margins, and this is a small operation. That's not the case. These are not mom and pop crabbers. This is not a sole proprietor shrimper or anything like that. I mean, this is a large industrial activity, and they harvest and kill things on an industrial scale. And so you got to look at it like that. It's not a mom and pop shrimping operation. It's a very large, internationally owned, industrial scale fishing operation.
They got spotter planes that are telling these pogie boats where to go. They got planes in the air flying, and they give them coordinates. The boat goes straight to that spot. They encompass that whole area with that net. And whatever's in that net, when they pulling that net in, the pogies regurgitate, and they put off this slime off their skin that's just, it makes the water like a slurry. It's real thick and it's nasty. So all of these fish that are in that net with the pogies are breathing that stuff in, and it's clogging up their gills, and they can't get oxygen, and that's why they're dying. So they have the hose with the big cage on the end that only allows smaller fish in. So when they release all the rest of the fish that are in there, they dead. This last instance we had, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I got a call on a Monday. It said they were right there on the beach, right here in front of Grand Isle. And then I got another phone call from a guy on Wednesday morning, because I went out Wednesday morning in my boat. We went to fish triple tail out towards the mouth of the river. And on the way back, I got a call from a guide that said Grand Isle Beach has hundreds of bull reds dead on the beach. So we were coming back from the mouth of the river, and I saw at least 14 pogie boats in Fort Bayou, which is just east of here. 14 of them. They were all together in this one area. So we went straight over there. So I got some pictures of some dead redfish floating. And then the Wednesday is when all the redfish were on the beach. I got pictures of all that Wednesday afternoon. Thursday, I got in my boat and I went to the islands east of Grand Isle, which is only accessible by a boat. And I have 40 pictures over there of dead bull reds. So all of those bull reds that they captured in the nets on Monday were all dead and floated against the beach. And that's the only ones I could find. There was probably more than that. Redfish don't have babies until they're over 27 inches, the ones that they're killing, there wasn't one dead redfish out of the 140 pictures I got that was under 27 inches.
So they're killing all breeding size redfish.
Yes, they're killing all the ones having the babies. But yet, they've stopped the recreational guy from keeping or catching them at all.
Thank you for calling Daybrook Fisheries. If you know your party's extension, you may dial it at any time. To leave a voicemail, press 1. After the tone.
Hey, my name is Lake. I produce a podcast called Backwoods University for the MeatEater Podcast Network. I'm calling to inquire to see if someone from your organization would be open to doing a quick interview. I have a flexible schedule, and I could do these interviews digitally, so please let me know if anyone from your organization would be willing to talk with me, and I would love to talk with you. Thank you very much.
I'm going to put this out there again. If anyone from the Menhaden fishing industry is willing to share their side of this story, by all means, get back with me. However, I think we can all agree that everything we have heard so far is some moving information. What I'm curious about now is, what do we do with it? Where do we go from here?
I'll preface this by saying I don't want anybody to lose their jobs. You know, there's a lot of things we've done in wildlife and fisheries over the years that we used to do that we can't do anymore because they realize it ain't good for the environment, it ain't good for the fisheries, it ain't good for the wildlife, what have you. So I think that's kind of where we're going with this. I mean, they've outlawed it pretty much everywhere else in the country, except for small ways. It's nowhere near the large scale industrial scale they have here in Louisiana. They have I think it's a half-mile buffer zone off of Plaquemines Parish. Mm-hmm. Which, look, half-mile is not that far.
No.
Let me tell you, if it was 3 miles, we would never have conflicts.
See, that's what's interesting is, so, I mean, I interviewed a guy in Grand Isle today, and, I was just trying to get honest answers, and I said, man, if you could have a magic wand and you can make the laws, you can wave a magic wand, what would you do? I thought he was going to say, I'd make the whole thing go away. Yeah. And he said, I just wish they'd stay at their 3 mile buffer zone.
3 miles in front of Grand Isle is great. I don't know why it's not 3 miles all along the coast.
Mm-hmm. So you think there could potentially be a way for them to find a way for everybody can work? Like, you don't necessarily have to shut the Pogie boats down. They just need to move out further. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I don't have a problem with the Pogie boats working, just not killing everything in sight.
Right.
And they probably still going to have some bycatch being that far out, but at least it's not on the beach where they're killing all of the speckled trout, the croakers, all the smaller fish that can't go out in that deeper water because they're going to get eaten. Mm-hmm. They own that beach because that's their protection.
Yeah. And
that's where they thrive at. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, if the Pogie boats were further out, and I know what they're going to say, the Pogie industry is going to say they can't catch nothing out that far. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
We're the only state that allows this practice to continue.
If you pushed them out further, you would never have that conflict. Because I'm going to tell you, we don't never drift out 3 miles.
Right.
Never, 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 never. Now, how it impacts their fishery, I mean, I can't say that. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. But I do know if they were outside of 3 miles, like they are off of Grand Isle, this would be a moot point.
Yeah.
Now, that ain't going to be good enough for some people. But you know what? I'm willing to give something.
Yeah.
Are they willing to give something?
Compromise.
Yeah, compromise.
I feel like, and this is, I haven't been able to talk to anybody on the Menhaden fishery side. I honestly, just for the sake of having a balanced journalism, I would try to talk to one of them, but I haven't been able to do that. But everything that I'm pointing to, that I can gather, points to this needs to be looked at just from a ecological standpoint for the health of the fishery. It's like, it seems to be folks need to take a closer look at this. And 2, I understand the Menhaden industry. I understand there's jobs there. I understand that.
Yeah.
Also understand how much tourism dollars and big the business is for charter guide services.
Well, okay, and not to cut you off, but therein lies a big problem because look, the commercial fishing has always butted heads with recreational. That is wherever you go, and look, there's sometimes there's a disconnect. People don't realize that, that what's going on out there, so they don't see it. Most of my people are from out of town. So not only did they pay my rate that I charge, but they're staying at a bed and breakfast right there in Port Sulphur. They're traveling through. We stopped at the local grocery store because they needed to get something when we came back from fishing. They went and ate lunch yesterday when they got in early. So they went and ate lunch at a small restaurant right there in Port Sulphur. So it's not only my fee, my rate I'm charging per day, but it's the lodges, it's the stores, and we're bringing all these people in. Mm-hmm. How much are the Menhaden boats? How many people are coming in on the Menhaden? None of those guys are coming in and staying at the lodges and all that. Yeah, the boats are buying food maybe from a local vendor. But as far as people actually come in and going down, those guys going to Venice Marina or going to Cypress Cove or going to the, this lodge or that lodge, they ain't doing that. Mm-hmm. And our guys are. We're a small parish. We don't have the oil industry like we used to have. Commercial fishing isn't like it used to be. So, they pay property taxes. And they've been around. They've been around a long time. So people want to protect it. And I get that. Like I said, I don't want anybody to lose their job, but I say, what about me? I mean, what about what I do? What about people coming from all over the country? I'd say 90% of my people are coming from way out. It's an economic impact that I'm telling you, if you didn't have that for a lot of these small coastal communities, it'd be a ghost town down there.
Yeah. I think it says a lot about the character of these men, that the solution that they're seeking here is really just an even playing field for both sides. I mean, really, after the stories that they shared, and honestly, some of them didn't even make it into the episode due to time constraints, I thought for sure that they would be wanting to put an end to Menhaden fishing outright. But they didn't. They recognized that this industry is how some folks make their living and support their families. They realize that this industry has an economic impact. I'm going to share my own opinion here, but based off of the information that I have right now, I think that what these guys are asking for is reasonable. They want to take a closer look at the fishing industry, the methods, the bycatch, the conflict between recreational and charter fishermen. Is there a way that they can find more common ground? Is there ways to continue harvesting Menhaden and it be more sustainable with less bycatch and less harm done to the habitat? These questions are not outlandish, and I think they're worth being asked. And more importantly, I think they're worth finding an answer to.
We really weren't ever pushing or haven't ever been pushing to eliminate the Menhaden industry. But what we wanted to do was find a way that they could continue to operate, but to protect some of those more sensitive habitats that we knew were being damaged by those nets and by those boats making contact with the water bottom and getting, very, very close to our beaches. I mean, I've seen pogie boats setting nets in water that was 4.5 to 5 feet deep. These boats draft 10 feet at least, 9 feet maybe at a minimum when they're empty, which means I have watched them plow through the water bottom. I have watched them dig up the sand and dig up the sandbars to get the boat into where they were harvesting the fish. And I know that purseine is making an enormous amount of contact on that water bottom. I see the amount of sediment that's being stirred up. And the fact is, there's not a biologist who would argue against this, but that, the majority of your biomass in a coastal situation happens in that area that's within a mile or two of the beach. That's just where most of your species are going to be. There was a conservation element to moving the boats into a little bit deeper water, and it was that by not having those nets all over the bottom of the water, you are going to reduce potentially the volume of bycatch, but also reduce the number of species that were being impacted. And you were going to keep that water bottom more intact. And this is something I think we've seen borne out in that bycatch study. As you move into deeper water, the number of species impacted go down, the volume of bycatch goes down, and so there is a conservation value to moving those boats into deeper water. You know, it'd be nice for them to make some concessions here and there that a little bit of conservation goes a long way, not just from a public relations perspective, but just from the value of our resource. You know, let's say you went to the prairie pothole region, right? And you told the duck hunters up there that there was this industry that was going to employ a few hundred people. It was going to have some economic impact on the communities. It was going to provide some jobs. The trade-off there is going to be, we're going to have to kill 30,000 speckled-bellied geese, about 250,000 blue-winged teal and mallards, and about 100,000 mourning doves, or 100 million mourning doves. You guys cool with that? Nobody would be cool with that. Nobody would be cool with that. And no politician would back that. You know, nobody would put their name to that. And yet, that's in essence what's happening here. I mean, that's sort of the level that we're dealing with. I mean, redfish in Louisiana are a game fish. And the bottom line is, it's not okay for those guys to be killing those fish. It's not. Because it's not okay for anybody else to be killing them.
I wish I had more education on the actual industry itself, as far as, you know, why going out deeper would affect their profit margin, or what would them being out 3 miles statewide do to their bottom line or their business. And I'm sure when people on the other side are listening to this, they're going to be saying, yeah, you don't know. No, I don't. But tell me. And let me know. But still, can we meet? Let's find a meeting place. I would say, hey, if you see boats over there, just don't go by them. What I'm doing is sustainable.
Yeah.
Because I ain't keeping nothing. I'm throwing them all back. Does a fish dying every now and then? Maybe. But I mean, we fight them, we unhook them. You know, every now and then you might have one that's hooked deep. It bleeds a little bit, but that is like very rare. You know, so I can say without a shadow of doubt that what I'm doing is sustainable. And if you protect the fishery, what I'm doing, you can do this forever. You know, if you keep on keeping on the way we're losing habitat, eventually all that large scale industrial fishing, that's going to be done.
I'll tell you one thing. From my separate conversations with Keith, Shane, and Chris, all of them have an undeniable appreciation for the Louisiana coast. It comes from a place of authenticity, and I respect it. It's impossible not to. Before we wrap this up, I want to hear some final thoughts from both Chris and Keith about what they think and hope for the future of the Menhaden fishing industry.
You know, my primary focus at TRCP has always been habitat restoration in the Mississippi River Basin, especially focused in Louisiana. It's a top 2 to 3 priority for our center in particular, and it's a priority for our board and for the organization. And it will continue to be, because I think there is a path. It's difficult to see it right now, but there is a path to not only better conservation in the Atlantic Basin when it comes to menhaden fishing, but also in the Gulf.
I'm opening as many eyes as I can to this right now. I'm hoping that something gets done. I mean, that's all I can do is try. Yeah. If I don't succeed doing this, I'm just going to throw my hands up and say, we can't do nothing about it. You know, that's all you can do.
Yeah. Well, I hope something does change.
Yeah, me too.
For all of y'all's sake.
It's not me. It's not about me. It's about the kids coming up. You know, families coming down here to enjoy themselves and catch fish in the future. Mm-hmm. I'll be long gone. People will still be fishing.
Yeah.
And if you keep wiping them out, they're not going to be here.
Regardless of where you fall on this issue, hopefully we can all agree on wanting a healthy and sustainable fishery and coastal habitat in the future. The question is, how do we get there? What do y'all think? If there's one thing I am confident in, it's that we should never be afraid to ask questions. I want to thank all of you for listening to Backwoods University, as well as Beargrease and This Country Life. If you like this episode, share it with either the worst or the best angler that you have in your contact list. Only don't tell them which one they are. Leave them guessing. And stick around, because if this podcast was an inshore fishing trip, we haven't even made it out of the no-wake zone yet. We're just getting started. There's a whole lot more on the way.